Good evening and welcome to our Success in the Senior Years information evening. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend the next hour with us, and we hope that it will be a really informative session for you all. My name is Josie Phillips. I have the privilege of being the middle school leader here at McRob, and throughout the course of this evening, you will meet a range of our school leadership team. Before we make a start, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge, respect, and express our gratitude to the Bunurong people, the traditional custodians on whose ancestral lands our school was founded, and the traditional custodians across Victoria where many of you are gathered today. We acknowledge the deep relationship of First Nations peoples to country and their continued care of lands, waterways, and skies. We commit to building a community through better relationships and greater understanding with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and by actively working towards reconciliation to make a better future for us all. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's sovereignty was never ceded, and the land on which we gather today always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Before we start, just a couple of quick housekeeping matters. Throughout this information session, we do encourage you to pop questions into our chat, and our team members will do our very best to respond throughout the evening and then at the Q&A section towards the end. We will also be recording this session and sharing it later next week via Compass Newsfeed. Across the course of this evening, we're going to cover a range of topics that are aimed at giving you the knowledge around how we can set our young people up for success in the future years, as well as give our first introduction to the senior pathways here at McRob. Please know that there are lots of information sessions throughout the course of this year, particularly as we get closer to subject selection time. So today is very much that initial overview for you. The first person you'll be hearing from today is Sue Harrap, our principal, and she is going to be talking through what are those foundations for success. Following that, we will have our senior school leader, Daniel Crowe, and our IB leader, Shungo Sawaki, talking to you about the IB and VCE systems. Sue will then join us again and unpack more about the ATAR and how it's calculated, and some other tips and tricks for our senior years. And following that, we will have Sam Crocket, assistant principal, unpacking what learning is and how to maximise that, both at school and beyond. Finally, we'll be joined by Tarsha Mautone, our careers coordinator, who will give some general tips on pathways planning and things to consider in future years. So to start our evening off, I would like to welcome Sue Harrap, our school principal. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks so much for joining us online tonight. It's so great to see so many parents and hopefully students are listening to this presentation. I'm going to begin by talking about overall what we need to do as a person to put ourselves in the best state possible for maximising learning, because it's when we're maximising learning that we're likely to do our best. So that involves taking care of our mind, our body, and our brain. Our brain, of course, does not live in isolation. It lives within a human body. And unless we're taking care of that, we're not likely to have maximised brain function. What we know about McRob students is that they're so dedicated to their studies, they're so highly aspirational, and they're so motivated that often they can compromise the amount of sleep that they get. From neuroscience, we know that unless you get adequate sleep, it's not possible for your brain to consolidate the learning that you've done throughout the day. We want our parents to work with school staff in partnership to send a message to our students that they must get at least 8 hours sleep. If they're compromising on that, they're compromising their capacity to learn. We know that our students don't listen to us, so we need your help in order to facilitate them getting an appropriate amount of sleep. We know that unless you're eating a healthy diet, you're also not able to learn appropriately. You can't think properly if you haven't had a breakfast, if you haven't had a lunch, and if you're not eating a decent meal in the evening. So a healthy diet at regular intervals. We often get students who get so busy and so distracted that they skip a meal and then they feel faint, they feel sleepy, they're unable to concentrate, and so their learning is compromised. These are some really basic things, but it's really important that we act as a team supporting our young people to do the best they can. Many McRobb students also think that the pathway to success is to give up things in their lives that are not academic learning. We know that this is not the case. As I was saying before, a healthy body and a healthy mind are the best things to facilitate the best learning. So, contrary to what many McRobb students think is the right thing to do, we're suggesting that they hang on to physical activity every day throughout their schooling and for the rest of their lives, for that matter. Be that making their way to Flinders Street and then walking to and from school from Flinders Street, getting some walking into their day if they haven't got time for anything else, but also hanging on to things like team-based sports or going to the gym. Those things are really important. They get endorphins from it. It helps them think better. It helps them sleep better. It helps to manage stress by being physically active. It's also really important to have time in your day for relaxation. And we know that a McRobb student is fitting a lot in. They've got additional travel as compared to other students. They're very motivated. They study a lot. But it's really important they take time out to do something. Just chill, relax, listen to music, pat the dog or the cat, take the dog or the cat for a walk, or perhaps not the cat, they're not very obedient. All of those things are really important. Having a family meal, sitting around, having a chat together, mucking around with their siblings, those sorts of things are really important. And they must have time for fun. We try to do things at school that are fun. We try to make the learning fun, and we've got a great co-curricular program at lunchtime, and also music ensembles, which are fun in the afternoon after school. But if they've got opportunities for fun outside of that, catching up with friends, going out for a meal, going shopping, all of these things to have what they define as fun are really important. It might be that they like gaming. So a small amount of gaming into their day might be something they think is fun. We all need fun in our lives. It would be a boring old existence if we didn't have that. We talk about McRobb here about two pillars. We're talking about wellbeing and we're talking about learning. And we're trying to proactively support the students to have a focus on their wellbeing and to develop the skills and tools so that they can proactively work on it. And we would love your encouragement at home to do that as well. And all of the things that I've mentioned so far will help them to work proactively on their wellbeing. The Connect program at school is vitally important because during that program, we are developing the skills and the capabilities for them to be proactively working on their wellbeing, but also we're working on pathways planning. So they've got options. When they leave school, they don't feel an enormous amount of pressure to achieve that one goal. We do want them to dream big. McRobb students do dream big, to set goals, but to break those goals down into smaller parts so that they're achievable and not insurmountable, and to not procrastinate, which is a feature of perfectionists. As I was saying before, the pathways planning in Connect is so important to have more than one plan, more than one pathway to get to the destination that you're hoping to get to. Once you've got those backup plans, it frees you, it liberates you, and Tarsha will talk a bit more about that at the end of the session. It removes that fear that you're going to fail if you know that there's multiple ways to get to the destination. At McRobb, one of our 4 values, as you can see on the screen, is growth, and we are constantly focused on growth and development. If we're focused only on performance, then it's likely many of our students will be unhappy because they can't perform at the best. Being the best at McRobb is a very, 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 very small possibility because we are with such wonderful students all together in the one place. So we have this mantra of focusing on growth. Growth is the key to happiness and it's the key to constant development. We encourage our students to have a growth mindset and we would like you to do that as well. And we can provide further support materials like how to have conversations that promote a growth mindset over the course of your time with us. We want students to understand that getting through year 9 should be a challenge. There should be things that they find difficult, but it's a relatively small challenge compared to year 10. And developmentally, we're preparing them for the next challenge. So they'll train up to climb Mount Kosciuszko, and then that will prepare them for climbing a bigger mountain range, perhaps the Rockies, which will prepare them for climbing an even bigger mountain range, maybe the Kilimanjaro, my favourite of all mountains, to get to year 12, which is the biggest climb of all. So we want them to build up to that. And everything that we do in year 9 is important to prepare them for year 10. Everything we do in year 10 is important to prepare them for year 11, and so on. So we don't expect them to be able to do everything all at once. We're building and building and building over the years. The other thing that we would like to emphasise is that consistency is important. Some students make the mistake of expending all of their energy and their study just before a big assessment. But if you build up over time, consistently studying a little bit here and there so that you're having repeated exposures to the material, then you're far more likely to have success than just cramming just before the big assessment. We also think it's important for our students and for you to understand our context. And so I'm going to show you a graph now, which helps you to understand that our students are not normal. And if we can emphasise that to them, they will feel much better about themselves. These two graphs here represent achievement and aptitude. Achievement on the left, aptitude on the right. The big block of yellow on both of those graphs represents the normal population. That's all young people across Australia, the normal population. And they fall from below average on the left-hand side to very superior on the right-hand side. The green line with the orange dots represents the McRobb students. You can see that the graphs in both achievement and potential are skewed to the right, very far skewed to the right, meaning our students are above average, generally speaking. There are very few students who are below average. You can see those lines are at 0 when it's below average. So understanding that everyone here is above average. So if you feel average here, you're still above average. And knowing that should be reassuring to you. They're not normal, our students, as in they're not on the normal curve. We know the best way to learn is to collaborate. If you're able to talk with, share your ideas, share your learning, teach others, then you have a much better understanding of what it is that you're learning, and you're applying your learning in different contexts. So we encourage our students to collaborate in the classroom, outside of the classroom. In fact, the purpose of McRobb is for them to learn from each other. One of the purposes of McRobb is that they have a highly able cohort with them. They can learn from and grow from each other. So collaborating is another way for them to achieve their best. I'm now going to throw it over to Daniel, who will talk to you about the VCE, and I'll be back later on to talk to you about a few other things. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Harrap. So my name is Daniel Crowe, and I have the pleasure of working mainly with our Year 11 and 12 students during their final 2 years at McRobb. My main role today is to give you a little bit of information about the structure of the VCE. And for a lot of our students, their VCE journey can commence in Year 10. So we allow students to do up to 4 units of study in Year 10. And when I use the term unit, so when I'm referring to the terms Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and Unit 4, that means a semester of study. So they will study their Unit 1 units over the course of Term 1 and Term 2, and then move on to their Unit 2 studies in Term 3 and Term 4. So in Year 10, we allow students to do up to 4 units of studies or 2 subjects. That can include subjects that they're doing outside of school. So some of our students will be enrolled in external languages and will complete a sequence of a Unit 1 and 2 study outside of school, along with another sequence of a Unit 1, 2 study at school. And that Unit 1, 2 that they're completing internally at McRob may be in methods, for example. They may choose to accelerate in math methods. Josie Phillips will explain the process for acceleration into Unit 1, 2 methods at a later date. But we also allow students to accelerate in various other domains, including the humanities and arts domains. On top of that, we offer, throughout our Year 10 curriculum, we offer enrichment studies, which allow students to develop some of the core understandings across biology or physics, which will hopefully give them the foundational skills they require to then move on and do potentially even the Unit 3, 4 electives once they move to Year 11. So students can select up to, as I said, 2 subjects in Year 10, and then they will complete either 5 or 6 Year 10 subjects on top of that. So if they do choose to do 2 Unit 1, 2 subjects whilst they're in Year 10 and they're approved to do so, then they will study 5 Year 10 subjects on top of that. And if they are studying 1 Unit 1, 2 subject, then they will do 6 Year 10 subjects on top of that. But we want to reiterate that whilst we encourage students to commence their VCE subjects in Year 10, we also want them to explore the full breadth of the Year 10 curriculum as well. And a lot of our subjects that we don't allow acceleration in Year 10 because we want them to be able to develop some of those foundational skills at Year 10. So for example, we don't allow students to accelerate in the English subjects because it's really important that they're getting continuity with their learning and making sure that they're doing Year 9, then Year 10, and then moving on to Year 11 and 12 English once they're in the VCE at Year 11 and 12. Moving on to Year 11, students will study 6 subjects in Year 11. That can be a combination of 5 Unit 1, 2 subjects, and Unit 1, 2 subjects has to include one of either English, English language, or literature, along with another 4 Unit 1, 2 subjects, along with 1 Unit 3, 4 subject, which is essentially their Year 12 subjects. Some students that are approved for acceleration will do 2 Unit 3, 4 subjects. And just to explain a little bit of the differences between Unit 1, 2 and Unit 3, 4 subjects at the VCE level. So Unit 1, 2 subjects don't count directly towards students' ATARs. They don't get study scores. So students will get a study score of up to 50 in each subject. And Sue will speak a little bit more about that later on. But Unit 1, 2 subjects don't count directly towards their ATAR, or they don't get a study score for their Unit 1, 2 subjects, but they are essential for developing a lot of the knowledge required. So a lot of the subjects at VCE level, particularly in the sciences, English, and maths, and also across the humanities and arts, require students to develop knowledge of both Unit 1, 2 and Unit 3, 4 subjects. So students can do either 1 or 2 Unit 3, 4 subjects in Year 11. And then when they get to Year 12, if they've completed 1 Unit 3, 4 subject before moving on to Year 12, then they will complete 5 Unit 3, 4 subjects in Year 12. That will always consist of either English, English language, or literature, and another 4 subjects. And if a student has already completed 2 Unit 3, 4 subjects before they get on to Year 12, then they will complete 4 Unit 3, 4 subjects. So we ask that all students complete 6 Unit 3, 4 subjects across the 2 years, but that can either be 2 and 4 or 1 and then 5 in their final year of schooling. So in terms of some of the strengths of the VCE, one of the key strengths of the VCE is there are a lot of subjects on offer. So we offer at the moment 29 subjects across 7 different domains. And those domains consist of maths, English, science, humanities, language, arts, technology, and then PE and health. Another strength of the VCE is that Year 11 provides students with the options to both accelerate in Unit 3, 4 subjects, but also develop their understanding through their Unit 1, 2 subjects. And one of the other key strengths of the VCE is that it does allow students to swap a little bit throughout the year. So if they're finding that they're doing a subject in Unit 1, for example, in Year 11, and that subject really is not for them, then there are a range of subjects that they can pick up at Unit 2. It can be more challenging in some subjects than others and is not recommended for some subjects, but there is a little bit more flexibility in terms of being able to swap throughout the year if they find that they're not particularly enjoying a subject and would benefit from swapping to another subject. I'll pass on now to Shungo Sawaki, who will explain a little bit more about our IB program and some of the differences between VCE and IB. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. My name is Shungo Sawaki. I'm the IB leaders of McRow. Today is basically all about giving you overview between the VCE and the IB pathway. There will be lots of other opportunities for families to really get the more detailed information about the VCE as well as IB. Kicking off on the 29th of February, we will go into very detailed information about IB for those families who are interested in it. You have also already, you've been giving the information about the fantastic result, the 2023 graduate for the first time. The McGraw has initiated the IB pathway on 2022. We have already achieved a fantastic result for the IB. So today is all about finding similarities and the differences between IB and VCE and start initiating exploring the first step to finding out which pathway is suitable for each student. Both VCE and IB students will complete the journey over the 2 years. Both courses will be given other course, and both students will receive an exam after year 12. The way we get the other course between VCE and IB is quite similar, both internal assessment as well as the external assessment. More about the similarity between VCE and IBs. Both VCE subjects offer the wide range of subjects, and assessments are also similar in terms of combination of internal and external assessment. Both offer the rigorous academic curriculum, and the students will be ready to take the university entrance with those results. Now on to the differences. The VCE is very rigid in terms of curriculum and the structures. And the BCAA has designated a particular sequence of the course and the scope of the assessment. Whereas keywords for the IB journey is basically students decide what they learn and negotiate with the teachers. So the students' agency and how they learn and what they learn is negotiated and collaborate between the students and teachers. IB is basically preparing for the future beyond high school and universities. So they are very inquiry-based approaches for all subjects and promotes very deep learning and curiosity for the students of interest for their studies. The difference between VC and IB, the IB, once you get into the IB journey, you won't be able to switch back to the VC. And the subject the students take is studied over the 2 years. There will be a core subject for the CAS and the TOC and EE. The detail of those features of the core subject will be explained to you on the 29th of February. There will be no SAC, internal assessment for the IB compared to the VCE. And the results will be announced out of 45, unlike a 50 for the VCE. And there will be the marks for the core subject as well. So in the IB, students will be receiving a total of 45. On the screen, you'll be able to see the list of the subject we offer for the IB. Once again, we will go through the details of these subjects on the 29th. The one thing it's probably noteworthy for these subjects, in the IB subject, students are selecting the 3 standards from these subjects, and 3 subjects are high level, meaning the students are accelerating into the university level of these subjects. Ms. Harrap will discuss the details about acceleration in the later presentations. I'd like to leave today with a regular timeline of the stepping journey to the IB pathway. So initiating from the 29th of February, we'll be running IB specific information. There will be a lunchtime social chat with a 2023 graduate, and there will be lots of Q&A documents circulating through that May and June, July. Then you will go through the individual conversation with those IB champions, and then both all year 10 students will be selecting IB or VC subject on the 25th of July. I'm now going to pass back to Ms. Harrap, so she will talk about the acceleration and other scope.
Thank you, Shungo. So just to reassure you all, that is the first entree that you'll have into finding out about the VCE and the IB, but we are committed to providing you with as much information as possible so you can make an informed decision about what's right for you. So McGraw has developed an acceleration policy based on years and years of experience of working with highly able young students. We know that our highly able young students tend to want to rush forward. And we are very conscious that when they do that, they can miss out on foundational knowledge, and that can shortchange them in terms of what they're able to do when they get into year 12. So our first message about acceleration to everyone is please don't rush. The second one is, as I've talked about earlier this evening, the skills and knowledge of year 9, year 10 and year 11 in that curriculum are very important and foundational to understanding and doing well in the year 12 curriculum, in either the VCE or the IB. We don't allow students to accelerate for acceleration's sake. Acceleration should be when a student needs extra stretch, when they're feeling like the subject that they're in isn't stretching them enough through the normal differentiation that a teacher will do, and they need further stretch. It should not compromise their capacity to work well and achieve well at the year level that they are currently in. So another reason not to rush the acceleration process is that the ATAR itself only counts for 6 subjects. So if we rush forward and we do too many accelerated subjects, it won't be worth anything because the ATAR only counts 6. We also find that when students rush forward and they accelerate in 2 subjects, for example, that by and large, what they do is they forget about the year level they're in. They only focus on those 2 accelerated subjects. So that can also mean that they are under undue stress. And our job as a school is to manage health and well-being as well as learning, and look at the evidence that provides the best learning and the best possible outcome for students. So we have a modest acceleration policy. We encourage all students to accelerate in 1 subject because learning for learning's sake is important, but we will only support and recommend that a few students accelerate in 2 subjects because they need extra stretch without compromising the subjects of the year level they're in. We'll explain this further to you over the course of the year. Josie will do that at another time. But it is important that as parents, you know that we have a modest acceleration policy because we're trying to protect our students from themselves in a way and to ensure that they get the best possible outcomes. We think that it is advantageous for every student to accelerate in 1 subject, as I said, and that is irrespective of whether you choose to go into the VCE or the IB. If you accelerate in a VCE subject in year 10 and then you choose to go into the IB, that's an advantage to you because you've been working at a higher level. You will be exposed to more complex concepts in that accelerated subject, and that will set a good foundation for you in the IB. It doesn't matter that that unit isn't counted in your IB diploma. You've still got the benefit of that learning, and learning is the most important thing. And the final thing I'll say about acceleration is that it's not about wanting to accelerate. You have to demonstrate through your reports in semester 1 and throughout year 9 that you need extra stretch, that you need to accelerate because you need extra stretch. We're not just going to let you accelerate because you want to. You have to demonstrate that it's going to be beneficial to you. And it's all about what's best for our kids. And we've got many, many years of experience working with these young people to know what works best. I'm now going to talk about the ATAR, the thing that all of our students are aspiring to as they graduate. The ATAR is actually a rank, a position on a scale from 0 through to 99.95. The maximum is 99.95. What the Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority do is they put all of the students who sat the VCE to begin with in rank order on that scale that I've just described. The ATAR is calculated by having English as the first subject in the calculation. I'm going to talk about English a bit further shortly. The next three scores that are the best scores that the student achieves are counted in the ATAR. And then finally, the fifth best score has 10% counted, and the sixth best score has 10% counted. And for McRob students, by far and away, the majority have a sixth subject. So what we refer to is the primary four. So there's English and three other subjects. The three best scoring subjects are the primary four, and then the 10% increment for the fifth and the sixth. You can see here that the student, the example that we've given, they did English, they got a 35, biology a 43, French a 42, chemistry a 40, and you can see that the scores are in order here of highest from lowest. And then they did Viscom, they got a 39 for that, still a great score, a 39. They got a 10% increment for that. And then the year before they had accelerated into history and they got a 38 for that. Now, on to my rant about English. Focusing on English from year 9 through to year 12 as a priority is the best thing you can do to achieve the strong ATAR that you desire to do. Whether that's in VCE or the IB, focusing on English, giving it the priority, making sure that even if you find it difficult, you put in your very best effort, that you practice writing, that you read, you read, you read. The more you read, the more different styles of writing you can compare to, the more your vocab is enriched, different ways of interpreting text can be developed, and that influences how well you can do in English in your final year of school. So what I'm going to say to you, parents and students, yes, read your English novels, read them more than once, at least twice. And I say to you, read those English novels in the Christmas holidays twice. And then you'll be studying them in class and you'll be better equipped to study them well. And at a very minimum, I would like you to try and foster that your children read at least 2 other books per term. The reason for this is, as I explained before, it gives you broader perspectives and it enhances your ability to read and interpret text, and that will be the greatest advantage that you can give yourself in the VCE or the IB, because English is the first one in the ATAR. The study scores for each subject are also ranks, and I'd just like to draw your attention to the way those ranks are achieved. So if a student, a 30 study score is the median study score. For those of you who are good at your stats, you'll know that 50% of the students are above 30 and 50% of the students are below 30. If a student gets a 35, then they have done better than 74% of the students in that study. So a 35 is a good score, a very good score. If your child gets a 40 as a study score, they've done better than 91% of the students in that study. So they're in the top 9% of that study. That's an amazing achievement. And if they get a 45, they've done better than 98% of the students in that subject. They're in the top 2%. So if they get a 50, that's an incredible achievement. But anything over a 30 is better than the median. So it's a good score. And I've just given you an example of a study that has 7,000 students. Only 140 of those will get over 45. And only about 14 of those students will get a 50. So it's a massive achievement to get scores that high. But speaking of scores, we know that many McRob students think, I'm going to do a subject that scales up. And they choose their subjects based on the scaling. Now, that is a recipe for unhappiness, if you ask me. You should choose your subjects based on what you enjoy, what you are naturally good at, and what makes you happy, not on how it scales. The reason for that, I'll elaborate on in a bit more detail when I give you some examples of different ATAR calculations. If you enjoy something, you're going to want to invest more time in it. It's going to be much more enjoyable. And it's a hard year, year 12. So you must do things that you enjoy, not because you think they're going to scale up. I think I've covered that point. Here, let me give you an example. Here's a sample student. They did English and they got a raw score of 32. It was scaled down to 30. They did maths methods. They got a raw score of 39. It was scaled up to 44. They did specialist maths and they only just got above the median. It was scaled up to 42. Chinese second language was scaled up to 41 from a 30. Chemistry scaled up to 40 from a 36. And biology scaled up by 1 from a 38. Now, that student got an ATAR of 92.25, a magnificent ATAR, great ATAR. Let's have a look at another example. The only thing I've changed here on this example is that the student did theatre studies instead of specialist maths. They love theatre studies. They love being on the stage. They love the joy of doing something different that wasn't just a bookish learning, collaborating with other students. They put their heart and soul into it and they scored extremely well. They got a 46. Now, yes, theatre studies is scaled down, but you'll notice only by a little bit once you get into the 40s. So this student actually did theatre studies, not specialist maths, which is scaled up, and they did better than the student who did specialist maths, which was a real grind because it was really hard and they didn't really enjoy it, and they got a better ATAR as a result. So only one thing changed in that example. Here's another example here, just to show you the power of English in your ATAR. This is the same example as the student who did theatre studies. The only thing I've changed here is the English score. And instead of getting a 32 for English, they got a 42. They put their heart and soul into English. You can see that the ATAR result difference is a 96.45. That's nearly a 4-point difference in ATAR because their English score was much better. So English is incredibly important. And the final example I've got for you here is some students think, well, I shouldn't do the things that I love because I'm not going to do well at that because they don't scale up typically. And here's a student who's got the most diverse course that you could possibly imagine. They're doing further maths, they're doing Viscom, they're doing history, they're doing philosophy, and they're doing music performance, all of the things that they really love. And irrespective of the scaling, if you examine the scaling, it comes down a little bit or it's just the same, they get an amazing ATAR, equivalent to the first student who did maths and specialist and Chinese and chemistry. This student got exactly the same ATAR. So I want you to know that doing what you love and enjoy, you can still do incredibly well in the VCE, and you do not need to worry about scaling. I'm hoping that my proof is in the pudding here. Now, the IB, as Shungo said, is scored out of a maximum of 45, which is very different to the VCE. That's 45 for all of the 9 subjects together. And once they get that score out of 45, it's then converted into a notional ATAR. And the IB produce results to show what the conversion rate will be. From the 45 points, it's a 99.95. This can change from year to year, and the IB publish what they're going to award. But you can see an IB score transfers into a ATAR, and VTAC is able to accept applications from IB students because of that. Just a little quote here from Confucius: choose what you love and you'll never have to work in a day. That's what it's like for me as principal. I'm here being principal, loving every minute of it, and it doesn't feel like work sometimes. It really is a joy for me, and I would encourage students to make that sort of choice for themselves. Choose the things that you love and you won't feel like it's hard labour. Over to Sam Crocket now, who's going to talk about effective studying. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. My name is Sam Crocket. I'm one of the assistant principals here at McRob. My portfolio really relies on helping students to learn as well as they can and our staff to teach them as effectively as possible. So it's a great pleasure I come today to talk about how students can study effectively, especially as they progress throughout their schooling. When we're talking about studying, it's important to think about the difference between homework and study. Homework is the ongoing tasks that students get set by their teachers. And these tasks are typically to do with finishing classwork, completing and consolidating work, and just getting through the course. Homework tends to ebb and flow as each term progresses. There'll be periods of intense homework and periods of less homework. But throughout the entire time students are with us, we expect that they should be doing ongoing, regular study. So study goes beyond homework, and it's about actually what it takes to learn the subject. What we're talking about here at a lowest level is things like memorizing concepts, but as we go up, things like applying and synthesizing and then making links between the concepts. Now, when students study, I think there's a common misconception that if they study more, it's going to have a more effective output. That's not necessarily the case. More is not necessarily the best. Because when students are studying, they're learning. And what we think about with learning is that this is actually a neurological process. We need to think about what actually helps our brain to rewire itself. So here are 5 tips that can help students to get the most out of their study from an evidence-based neurological approach. The first one is that you only remember what you pay attention to. This means that when you're studying, you need to be in a state of focus. Nothing that you miss in your attention can ever pass into your short-term memory and transfer into your long-term memory. And so the most important thing is to make sure that you're focusing on the work as you go through. Now, unfortunately, there are plenty of competing distractions all around students. And I would really recommend that students work through a process by thinking critically about how are they going to achieve this focus when they go to study. This might be through things like downloading some sort of a app that blocks their access to certain other apps while they're studying, or in my opinion, the most effective technique, which could be to encourage a dialogue between students and their parents so that you have an agreed upon set of standards that the student can adhere to when they're studying so that they can maximize their focus. My second tip is that for learning to stick in the brain, it actually has to be made meaningful. Rote learning, just going over and over the same material, or reading your notes or underlining notes without any additional information, really only ever provides surface level learning. And this makes it really hard for us to recall at a later stage. Probably the most effective technique students can use is to make their learning meaningful, to elaborate on it and apply it to other concepts that they've learned. Ideally, if they keep it personally relevant, this makes it, the evidence shows, the most easy for them to recall at a later stage. So it's not enough just to read or to study the material. Students need to apply it, put it into context, do worked examples, test questions, and actually use the information. Arguably, the most effective technique you can do to apply it is to actually teach what you've learned to somebody else. And we really encourage our students to do that in terms of their work in study groups together. Somewhat counterintuitively, another thing that really helps us to learn is to actually put more effort into it. Often we think, oh, it's so great, we can learn this concept because it's easy. But we find that when something is easy to learn, it doesn't necessarily stick around for the long term. And the researchers Bjork and Bjork had this concept of desirable difficulties. And desirable difficulties are things that make the learning process more challenging, but yield better longer-term results for your study. This means doing things like testing yourself rather than just reading. Engaging in pre-testing before you start to do any of the work to set yourself a set of expectations about where you need to concentrate your revision. Spacing out your study. Sue mentioned earlier in today's presentation the importance of regular revision, making sure that it's done consistently. But ideally, if we do this by spacing it out with a break in between and coming to it later, each time we reinforce the memory trace that we've initiated when we first exposed ourselves to that material. The concept of interleaving is a bit complicated, but this involves mixing up the information that you study in any given period. So instead of spending a whole night just studying one subject, students will actually have a better long-term memory if they study multiple different topics or concepts in the same night and then repeat that over multiple nights. And that's where this idea of interleaving comes in. And finally, variation is really important, where we talk about we vary how we study, so we mix up our routines, and even we vary where we study. And these small, subtle differences create more cues in our brain that can help us to access the information more easily when we need it on the test or the assessment. Of course, Sue also spoke about the importance of sleep, and certainly downtime is essential for consolidating everything that we've learned. When we're talking about sleep, what we know is that there's different types of sleep, and that REM sleep, that deep quality sleep, is what's required for the consolidation of memory. So we want the good sleep. What we don't want is the sort of sleep that happens automatically after an all-night cram session. This disrupted, impoverished sleep actually diminishes the quality of our REM and reduces our ability to recall information down the track. So we really encourage students to have regular sleep routines and practice good sleep hygiene so that they can maximize the memories that they formed during the previous study. And my final tip is to get some positive emotion. We know that being in a positive mood state enhances our brain in memory in so many ways. It makes our brain more receptive to learning, but it also reinforces the pathways that have been established while we've been in that mood state. Of course, we know that desirable outcomes make us strengthen the behaviors that came before them. And so making sure that students are reflecting on their progress and feeling that satisfaction when they learn something new is really effective. As parents, you can support your children to do this. When you're chatting with them, ask them what they've learned and congratulate them. Show your pride in their progress and their ongoing growth. And if anything I've said in these last 5 tips has sparked some imagination in you, which I hope it has, I would love to hear more from you about what you think learning is all about. This year, McRob is on a really exciting journey to try and articulate what learning is and how students can do it as effectively as possible. And our plan is to design a school-wide learner model that can standardize our language around learning and really embed a culture of ongoing learning and evidence-based strategies to help our students to get the most out of what they're doing at the school. So if you're interested in having some input into this process, we'll be running parent focus groups as well as student focus groups throughout the coming 2 terms. So watch this space and I'll be in touch soon. Thanks very much. I'm going to hand over to Tarsha, our careers coordinator, for the next section. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name's Tarsha and I'm your career practitioner. Most students through year 9 and 10 may have already touched base with me, and certainly they will in regard to work experience, and I look forward to getting to know you even deeper as we go. Tonight I'm going to touch on how careers will support you through your subject selection and through your tertiary applications. So making good career choices, making the best career choices involves knowing what your interests are, knowing what your strengths are, knowing your values. We'll be touching on this during Connect classes across the beginning of year 9 and year 10. You also need to have a great understanding of the world of work and the options that are available to you. And we introduce that through numerous industry connections across your time here at McRob. Understanding the world of tertiary is essential. There are many different pathways that you can take now. Don't ever feel that just an 8R is going to prevent you from doing so. There are more than 68% of students now will attend university without an 8R. We'll talk further about that shortly. You need to be able to plan and decide on what that goal is and how you're going to attain it. How to do this? You're supported through Connect lessons, event information sessions. Regularly over lunchtime, I hold information sessions on different study fields, career circles with our alumni, and we have numerous tertiary visits as well. That occurs from year 9 all the way through to year 12. I would encourage you to attend open days, ask questions at open days. This should be commencing from at least year 10 onwards. Seek to take up additional work experience opportunities. We have a very strong work experience program here in year 10, but we'd encourage you to take advantage of it in the April school holiday period in year 11 and year 12. And year 12s have just been notified that I will also be accepting applications post VCE exams. So it gives them an opportunity as well to touch on different areas that they may be considering for university that they didn't have an opportunity to take in year 10. Build your profile and skill sets. We've talked about this earlier in regard to extracurricular. Get yourself involved. Being and promoting that profile, whether it be through your resume or whether it be for international applications, is essential to what we will share about your other skills and characteristics. You are encouraged to get a casual job or a volunteer role across the duration of secondary school. Graduates, when you do exit university, your employers will be seeking to look back and know, what did you do during year 11 and 12? It shows really great determination and good planning skills for a student that has taken that on. Talk to your network. That may be family, it may be myself, it could be friends, it could be alumni. Learn about the world of work and their experiences. What to consider when you're selecting your senior year program. Yes, you have the choice of 2 particular certifications here at McRob, VCE and IB. Which one should it be for you? Always consider what are your aspirations, your interests and your strengths first. What's on offer in each? Do those subjects appeal to you? Is it meeting the prereqs for university? When we talk about prerequisites, they're preset in year 10, always 2 years out from the year in which you will enter. So you are assured of what you are informed and assured of what you're putting within your senior year course is going to set you up for university. Know, though, that you do want to keep this broad, so don't just be focusing on one area when you are selecting your prereqs. And we'll talk to this a lot more as you get to selection in year 10 in particular. During term 2, you'll have a lot of information sessions throughout Connect, as well as parent and student information. Lots of resources will be shared as well. I would encourage you, as Ms. Harrap said, don't be in a hurry. Trial subjects across year 10 and year 11. Those unit 1-2s are for trial when you're in VCE. If you don't enjoy them, it can be a change. I can't tell you how many year 12s I meet with who will say to me, I took 2 year 12 subjects, Miss Mautone, and I did not do well at either. Really think strongly about selecting one, focusing on it, learning the expectations and what you want to take forward into year 11 and year 12. We support students by carrying through careers and subject selection guidance, and that's incorporated in our Connect program, as well as in many resources that are developed and shared with both families and students. You're supported with tertiary contacts, and we run a careers expo here in May. That'll be upcoming soon in term 2, and those details will be shared shortly. Parents are encouraged to come along to that expo as well and ask questions of tertiary providers. I'd also encourage you to attend with your child at open days. We'll run many information sessions, both as webinars and in person here for students across lunchtimes and after school. We are always building our industry connections. Just even today, I spoke with Tesla and Boeing about how we will build our work experience program. And these are anticipated to grow in due time. In addition, we always hold a one-on-one course counselling session with your child and you as you come towards selecting your senior year program, and they're held around the start of term 3. So lots of information to be shared coming towards the end of term 2. And then in term 3, you'll have a one-on-one counselling session with a staff member to guide you and answer the questions that you should have. Meanwhile, I'll be holding lots of information sessions in the library over recess for year 10 as we head towards that. And I'd encourage year 10 students to attend and ask questions to clarify what it is that you should have within your course. When it comes to tertiary applications, I'm just going to touch on this for you so you know the process moving forward. You don't need to panic. You don't need to meet with me right now in regard to this. But just to give you a heads up, come term 3 and 4 in year 12, you will apply to universities here in Victoria and around the country. Both VCE and IB students apply for university in the same way through the state's tertiary admission centre. Here in Victoria, you will have heard the term most likely called VTAC, and that's the Victorian Tertiary Admission Centre. And you will apply for university here in Victoria through them. It is one application with the preference of numerous universities. The number of preferences varies state by state. Internationally, you also apply in year 12. However, that opens generally mid-year. However, there is considerable work to be done in this domain. So if you are considering it, I would recommend commence meeting with a career practitioner at McRob in year 11 and ensuring that you're on top of what those requirements are. There may be additional testing required. There may be additional personal statements, transcripts, etc. It can be quite a load, and year 12 is busy enough. So if you can get on top of this and plan for it in year 11, then absolutely do. Both IB and VCE are recognised around the world. I deal with universities even at Oxford and Cambridge that have a great understanding of VCE. We also support our students with a school profile and with transcripts that outline how that relates to the general population. Early entry programs, they're becoming really big in our mix now. We're seeing a really big rise in the last 2 years from ANU, Swinburne, RMIT, La Trobe. Not all courses are in what we term as an early entry program. So I would always encourage you to check, but that will be shared with you as they open during year 12. They do take into consideration VCE Unit 1-2s or IB Year 1. And again, this is where we say, put your focus into your year 11 studies. Don't drop the ball. It's very, very important in this market as we move forward. We're going to see more universities offer this. They will not look at your year 12 studies. They will look at your year 11 for early entry because your final scores for year 12 you will not receive until December. Therefore, it's really important to take advantage of these. They might be a backup plan. It may not be your dream course, but what a relief that would be as you sit your VCE exams to know that that is sitting in the background. I would encourage you to have careers conversations at home with your child. You are the role model, the most important one in their life that they're coming to. So I'd ask you to think about, how do you lead by example when you talk about work? How do you talk about it? Is it in a negative frame or is it in a positive frame? Maybe some of us might even need to move roles. So these are things to think about when you're expressing and talking about your work and the roles that sit around you. Please remember, these young adults that are within your company are listening and taking this in. We want them to commence in the world of work with a really positive outlook on what that looks like for them. I popped in some questions that might be of help to you as you're having that conversation. Often it's around the dinner table about, how was it today? What was your best subject? What are you really enjoying? These are really great ways about getting to know your child. So when it comes to subject selection, you are far more aware. Remembering it is their choice, and with all due respect, we understand that you will want to have input to that and want the best for them. But at the end of the day, to understand their why and where they're going with that is the best way of helping them as they move forward. I look forward to meeting you all across the year, and I wish you luck with the future years. I'm going to now pass it back to Josie.
Thank you, Tarsha, and thank you to all of our presenters this evening. As we come to the close of our session, I would like to thank you for spending the last hour with us, and we hope that you've been able to learn some valuable information throughout the night. If you do have any final questions for us to respond to, please pop them in the chat and I will ask the relevant staff member to come up and respond for you. But know that there'll be further opportunities to talk with us with our one-on-one student course subject interviews, with our curriculum information nights in June. And as Shungo mentioned at our IB information session last week. If there are no questions, I will wait around for a couple of moments, but thank you for spending your time. We will share a recording of this later next week on Compass. Thank you, everyone.